Welcome everyone at our weekly community meeting of developers Cozystack. We have Telegram group where you can join and ask your questions. We also have a Slack channel and official Kubernetes Slack. And traditionally we ask if there's somebody new on call who would like to introduce yourself. So I see there is someone. Do you want to introduce yourself? Just put a few words about you. Or we can.
My name is Sasha, and I am an SRE engineer in one Russian company makes smart home devices.
Cool, thank you. So today in agenda, we have few topics, mostly about the new releases. There were new release of Cozystack, where were added S3 support, the basic implementation of CVDFS. Now you can easily order your S3 buckets just from the interface. So you can click and install some S3 buckets, then get access key from here. That was also introduced a new Kubernetes Cozy driver for provisioning such volumes. And this is standard Kubernetes interface for ordering S3 buckets, same way like we do with PVCs and PV mechanisms. Cozy provides abstraction for ordering buckets. Also, network isolation between tenants has improved. We reworked the asylum policies. Now it works as it should, and I think we should consider enabling this mode by default in the next releases. There were UI updates. So we changed all the icons for all the applications. Now they look nice. We added development guide for Cozystack and also updated instruction for installing on Headsnare, updated Asylum, fixed issues with tenant Kubernetes clusters because garbage collection wasn't working there. Also issues with forwarding HTTP and HTTPS traffic into it. Community contribution, we added snapshot controller. Also updated linstore, Talos Linux, KubeOVN, and probably that's it. Also, we introduced the opportunity to every application to specify exact resources needed to be shown for the user. So every application can now include specific role. And in this role, you can specify which exactly Kubernetes resources should be shown to the user in dashboard. That's all about the new version of Cozystack. Today, there are also a new release of Talm configuration manager. And there are a few changes. First, the Talos ACL library, which included in Talm, was updated to the latest version. Fixed some bugs for displaying specs and resources when you use Talm get something, Talm get routes, Talm get links, or querying actually some resources from the node. And also we added option for Talm init to update the library chart of the Talm itself. And also small fix for one of the template inside of this chart. That's all the changes connected to the Talm. And now we can switch to the discussion. And I have a good question that we have a lot of services here, but not all of them can be accessed externally. So for now, we have such option like external true false that will provision external service, load balancer service for accessing those applications. The problem is that it is not secure. Those applications usually can be running without authentication, and it is not very secure to publish them that way. There were all tasks. How can we ensure this security, or can we make some proxy? There were ideas for publishing them through the Ænix ingress or a proxy ingress. Do you have any ideas here?
Maybe we can add some some input for make IP for make list of IP addresses or something white list to access with.
Yeah, this is a good idea to provide whitelist option for every application. I think it is good start point. And there is still an issue. How can you provision? How can you organize access to the tenant deployed services from the external systems? I think it would be nice to provide some solution like, I know, VPN service, or to configure KubeVPN for make it accessing through the specific VXLAN. That's just thoughts. If you have any ideas, please talk about them, because currently this problem is not solved.
Sorry, maybe we can somehow switch a tenant to a separate VLAN or something. So all the services are accessible only inside the VLAN.
It should be possible. The only problem is that Kubernetes has few different kinds of networks. Like you can move pod networking into specific VLAN, but all of those services usually accessed through the Kubernetes services, which are managed and handled by Kubernetes services plugin, in our case, Cilium. And this network is usually running right on the nodes, and it can't be moved to specific VLAN because it is ephemeral. George?
Yeah.
Unfortunately, there is no generic approach for this task, because as I understand, there is a lot of different Cozystack users. But if we are considering a very simple and basic installation of Cozystack, so let's say we are allocating IP addresses for nodes, we are allocating several IP addresses for VIP, for API services, for ingress, and why we could not make some requirement for the infra that we asking the customer to provide a block of addresses like /24, or I don't know, like /maybe 16, which will be in fact an addresses for every service published outside of Cozystack. So it will be just a linear address space.
This is what is working right now. So customer or client and user can add just two type of networks, for example, public addresses and gray private addresses. And they can get IP addresses from those range. The problem is that if you do this way, any external client can access these services, and there might be security issue because, for example, some services does not support encryption and authentication.
It should not be a security issue. I would explain why. So if we are talking about basic applications included into Cozystack, like, I don't know, Postgres, Rabbit, Kafka, anything else, they must be secured by default and provide TLS encryption. So it should not be an issue. Regarding password complexity, it's on the side of customer, which needs to set up a proper user names, passwords, and other stuff, and we could not restrict user from doing something stupid. Yeah, but what we can offer additionally, something like network policies, which will limit access to the services only from allow list of IP addresses. It should be embedded into Cilium or Core, and I think it should work out of the box.
Totally agree.
Yes. So finally, to make some conclusion, it should not be an issue to publish some service outside of Cozystack. So if somebody is using, like, I don't know, Postgres without TLS with some simple password, it's just a misconfiguration, typical misconfiguration. Also, if we are brave enough, we could leverage a separate virtual machine or something similar, or ingress controller, and just provide to every TCP service covered by TLS a separate domain name, and select a backend service by SNI technology. I checked it many times. It works, and it should not be a very difficult setup for arbitrary service. So we have even instructions how to install Kafka in such a scenario.
Will CNI work in case we're not using HTTP protocol? For example, if we expose...
Yes, I just told to you that if you are using TLS is a separate thing from HTTP, yeah, it would be working. So it works with Postgres, it works with Kafka, and it should work with some additional protocols. Unfortunately, if we are talking about like some very strange things like fix protocol, it's from financial world, it's like arbitrary text messages. It depends on the client. So if client is smart enough, yeah, it would be working. If client is stupid and it does not have a like TLS capability built in, there are some additional workarounds with installation of additional components like a tunnel on the client side.
Yeah.
Anyway, it could be handled.
What do you think about giving access through the VPN? So every customer can get access to their namespace using VPN installed in the same namespace.
It's not flexible. So why we need to expose services outside? Let's say we have some legacy application running outside of Cozystack, and we want to use a Cozystack like a platform for hosting a bunch of PostgreSQL clusters or Kafka clusters or anything else. So it's kind of integration question. So it arises a lot of times in different scenarios. So if you put whole application with all its dependencies inside of Cozystack, the only endpoint you will need is an ingress, probably for HTTP services or for gRPC services. But in some general scenario, user will want to publish everything he can publish. Databases, storages, services, I don't know, even more.
We have two cases. In first case, clients wants to access their services from a private network in running in different system, for example, OpenStack or OpenNebula running in different servers. And in this way, whitelisting should be working fine. The other problem is accessing from their Kubernetes cluster deployed in Cozystack, external services running outside of Cozystack in private network.
Sorry, I don't get why we need to connect to a tunnel from inside of Cozystack.
From inside of Cozystack, we don't need to do anything. I'm just talking about integration with external systems like Proximus, OpenNebula, and stuff like that. Some of users having private networks running there. For example, it might be VLAN or VXLAN, and there is opportunity to edit, to configure VXLAN in their pod networking for certain tenant namespace. The problem is that services network will not be accessible for external systems, or should be.
Why services network should be available for the external services? I don't understand. So look, if we are talking about services network, it's just a virtual thing. It's like rules in IP table. So what is really important, could we expose in some arbitrary way, like with load balancer, with an IP address from the single pool of Cozystack, even tenant is put inside of separate VXLAN or VLAN. But it could be achieved probably with Multus or another CNI plugin, which using, I don't know, like multi-homing or multi-interfaces.
Yeah, it can be done with KubeVN. The only problem is services networking. So ingress traffic from external system to the Cozystack services, it should go through the services anyway. So it looks like to integrate ingress traffic from external system to the Cozystack, we always have to make services network available for it. So we have to put those VLANs into the nodes itself. The thing my concern here is that if we are allowing external systems to go to node networking layer, we should properly secure it with policies. And I think in this way it should work.
You can run into issues because of overlapping of IP addresses or something similar, and probably you will run into the same architecture as cloud provides when you have some VXLAN. It has a separate IP addressing inside of Cozystack, and you have some router inside of Cozystack or next to it, or with NAT feature. So masquerading all the addresses of nodes inside of Cozystack.
Yeah, I agree. We should keep into flat networking design because it is very simple and Kubernetes comes with this. And I think we should continue using it and to not overcomplicate things.
Yes, and
right?
also it would be very nice to draw some diagrams because it's become very difficult to understand which particular network setup we are talking about, and there are different ones.
Marian suggests using Sidecar VPN for pods.
Yeah, sure.
Where?
If we need to open access to one pod or two, we can add to each pod Sidecar VPN and configure this.
What kind of VPN are you talking about? some WireGuard, for example.
WireGuard, yes.
I don't like this solution. There are many side effects and drawbacks. Like, first of all, it will be a bunch of sidecars, which is difficult to manage. It's difficult to monitor it. Also, sidecars will need to have privileged access to the node and its kernel, and they will be putting additional.
Sure. Okay, but we can use also for this maybe Istio for this opportunity.
I think Istio will not solve this case because it is something different. I think about using a gateway API. Let's come back to this question. I saw the latest version of Cilium added in Voi, and I think it was added there for reason for making networking gateway API in Kubernetes working. So I think we can use gateway API for exposing those services externally.
In fact, gateway API is the same as Ingress, to be honest.
Yeah, but it can also be working with TCP.
It's arguable.
I think this task should get more research. So I'll get your points, and I will try to research it a little, and will come with response on the next meeting.
So in fact, Gateway API is providing a nice configuration options. Would it be working? It depends on the implementation of Gateway API controller. Like, we can expose TCP services even with Ingress and Ænix, but we need to put a configuration inside the config maps, which is error prone, and nobody likes it. Yeah. But I totally agree that Gateway API is the next step, and I implemented it on several of my projects, and I really like it much more than default Ingress way of exposing services.
Can you tell a little bit more what the problems it solves and why it's better?
So in fact, Gateway API is like a thinking of what is Ingress, because Ingress object is not very convenient. It does not add some additional features like authentication, authorization. It has a very weird syntax for redirects. So you usually finish with a bunch of annotations for a particular Ingress controller. So you have a very limited set of standard features. Yeah, Gateway API is some try to rework it and implement everything on the specification level of custom resources, and it's really nice. But it's sometimes you need to. So if you have a like typical application in Ingress, it would be like 3 lines of code. Yeah, 3 lines of code inside of Ingress object. In Gateway API, it will be like 30 lines of YAML code in 3 different custom resources. That's all. But it's
I like this YAML code.
yeah, but it's really nice. I used it. Because I had an emissary called before Ambassador. Yeah, and Gateway API is a good try to make a better implementation for service exposing.
Okay, so am I right that you can use Gateway API, all the features of Gateway API, and configure Envoy for it? Because I really like how Envoy working. The configuration is really difficult. Is there controller for this? I guess Cilium does.
It's a difficult question because Gateway API has a lot of different settings, and not all of them are covered by implementation. So I used Envoy, so-called Envoy proxy, yeah, and it still lacks some of the features, and you are forced to write, very terrible syntax of Envoy filters.
Interesting. May I just get know with what solution did you use Gateway API?
Envoy proxy.
Within the web proxy. Got it.
Yes.
Well, interesting. Thank you for your feedback.
Yeah,
Let's
so what I checked, basic functions like publishing service, publishing TCP service, TLS, let's encrypt issue of certificates, rewrites, redirects, everything is working. But if you need some additional features like API keys for services, it's not implemented right now, but they are promised to be implemented in near future.
Interesting. Thank you.
But basic OIDC flow is working.
So it can already be used to replace Jinx ingress and ingress resources.
Yes, perfectly, yes. And I wanted to make some suggestion to move to Gateway API instead of Nginx, but you oversee it.
It can take a lot of time for reworking everything. We can add it into a roadmap.
If you have ingress, you can have two options, or just set up Envoy gateway in such a way it would consume ingresses and somehow build its own configuration inside of it, or just use a converter from ingress objects to gateway API replacements.
I have worries that some components will not be working. For example, Cert Manager.
As I told you, Cert Manager is working with
it is working.
Based on annotations.
Got it.
Yeah, so it's just not like a one-to-one replacement, but there are big chances that you won't need to rewrite everything from scratch, and you will only fix some issues, small issues.
Okay. So since we started talking about Cert Manager, I think we also have to consider, should we add automatic DNS management to Cozystack and how it should look like? There were some pull requests about adding external DNS controller. I think this exactly should be solving this issue. Do you have any experience with external DNS controller?
I had.
And could you provide?
I also have some.
Could you give an advice how it should be implemented in Cozystack approach as a system component, as tenant-based system component, or is it possible to use single DNS, external DNS controller for whole cluster, for example?
Oh, it's a very difficult question. It depends on what you want to achieve. So let's say we can use one external DNS only if we have one single DNS provider containing all the records for all services inside of Cozystack, inside one Cozystack installation, single Cozystack installation. So it could provide, so in such a case, it could provide domain names for tenant clusters, for managed services inside of main cluster, and it would be fine. But if you are targeting Cozystack for a really multi-tenant environment with a strong isolation, you finally will run into multiple controllers inside of every tenant cluster with a separate set of settings. Otherwise, it would be like security breach when one tenant could reassign DNS records for another tenant.
Yeah, you mean running DNS controller inside of tenant Kubernetes clusters. Right now, I'm not talking about this. I mean that we can use it only for management cluster for now. And the question is, should we add multiple controllers because they might be configured with different API keys per tenant? or should be it enough to add just single controller and single configuration for all the cluster?
Or if there will be a different DNS providers for tenants, yeah. So let's say every tenant has its own Cloudflare account, yeah. It means that you have no options otherwise to have a multiple external DNS controllers, everyone with its own configuration. It does not support to putting a list of like Cloudflare accounts into a single instance. It does not work.
So it looks like it should be implemented on the tenant level.
I don't agree, because you probably want to have one external DNS on main tenant level, which will be responsible for providing records for managed services like Postgres and for tenant Kubernetes clusters.
Yes, correct.
Because
But
not
still-
everybody to have a different. So let's say we have a one customer which uses a Cozystack for development stance. Yeah, if you will force him to have a bunch of external DNS controllers, it would be just a nightmare of configuration.
No, I mean that we can put this configuration into tenant level. For example, when you create new tenant, or if you're configuring tenant root, you can configure your access keys for Cloudflare, for example. And then all the hosts created under this tenant, they will be managed using those keys.
Difficult question. So we need to collect some user cases, yeah, because let's say if one user have multiple domains from different providers in one tenant, again he will run into multiple external DNS controllers inside of single tenant, and you could not do anything with it.
In our case, tenant is entity of the configuration, so it has host assigned. It can have separated etcd cluster, separated monitoring, and I think in this case can also have one configuration. So it can be configured the same way like we using here. So we can create additional service here. So anytime when you create a new host name, it will automatically reuse DNS controller specified for parent tenant. If this one is not specified here, it will use the tenant root DNS controller.
Look, from my point of view, so if you have an hierarchy of tenants, and every tenant anyway will have some probably fake domain name, yeah, like so tenant 4.
Why fake?
Let's say tenant foo, in fact, will have a domain called foo.root, yes, or something similar. So you can just use a single external DNS on the tenant root level. You don't need to have additional ones. But when we are talking about integration with an external services, so we have some Postgres or Ingress inside of, like, let's say, tenant bar, and it should have a public IP. Then it's a question how it should look like.
They will just reuse the same DNS, external DNS controller assigned to this tenant. I think this should work.
Guys,
Yeah.
I suggest that we have a root external DNS service that will automatically just
Assign
look
all
at
the-
Kubernetes. That will just look at the Kubernetes service names and create DNS records in this hierarchy. So we have a separate zone for each tenant, which is a parent of a cluster zone. And if a customer and tenants wants, So he could bring his own external DNS, and we can make it available in his dashboard. What do you think about it?
Yeah, that's a point I'm trying to put here. That
You can just restrict user from anything, and let's say, so like in OpenShift, we have some base name for Cozystack, which is managed by Cozystack admins, and we don't care about any customers' services, and it's his own issue how he will bind DNS names to other DNS names, probably with some CNAMEs or similar technology.
This is correct. Still, I want to remember that Cozystack is administrator area, and it is not allowed to run any services in management cluster by users. So if we provide such opportunity to specify keys for external DNS, it should be done explicitly by administrator. And definitely there should be option for restricting this usage. No, I think we don't have to have it.
Yes, what is more important, external DNS won't know anything about workloads put inside of tenant clusters like Kubernetes.
Yeah. We're not talking about this right now. We are talking only about management cluster. So I just still thinking if we should put it into system level, so it will work cluster wide, or should we put it into tenant level to make it recursively for every tenant?
Then it's possible to use it only once in tenant root, maybe.
So it will be possible to use only tenant root, but it will also possible to create multiple tenants with different controllers.
Then you need to explain use case, why we need to have multiple controllers.
I think it might be useful for development environments. From my perspective, it can be useful to specify account with less amount of privileges. From other points, still, Cozystack is administrator area, and it is not allowed to user to create their application there. I don't know. Let's just think about this.
But look, so as I mentioned before, external DNS inside of tenant full doesn't know nothing about Kubernetes cluster inside and cluster to internal. So even user will deploy some customer services inside these clusters, external DNS won't pick up them without some integration from our side.
There is one integration from our side. It can be done by administrator that you can, for every tenant Kubernetes cluster, specify ingress, which will go through the ingress controller installed on the root. So it is possible, and it is used by multiple users right now.
So ingress controllers inside of tenant root or even tenant 4, tenant bus.
Yeah, it can route user traffic as well.
We will have inside of its ingress objects custom user domain names, right?
Yeah, it can have. But it should be configured by administrator that those domains assigned to this cluster, and they can be accessed through this ingress controller, the same one which is used to accessing Kubernetes API. I found another use case. For example, we can have tenants which are managing different domains. For example, one domain is hosted in Azure, second domain is managed by Cloudflare. In this case, we might need to have different external DNS controllers.
Yes, and they may be all in the same namespace.
Even in the same namespace, this is correct, and it makes the situation even worse.
It does not sound bad because external DNS So how does it work? So it watches for all ingresses and services inside of cluster, yeah, or probably inside of a particular namespace. It could be passed like an argument of command line to the controller. It has a allow list of domains which it will be listening to.
Oh, so this is possible to specify which domains should be managed from which system.
Yes, yes. So if you have like Cozystack.io managed by Azure and Cozystack.net managed by Google, you will deploy two controllers. One you will limit to first domain and put an Azure credentials, and the second configuration of the second controller will limit the watching domains only to Cozystack.net and to like second DNS provider.
This is very cool. In this way, it means that we can have external DNS as a system component.
We can maybe deploy to tenant clusters an external DNS pre-configured to be a part of our cluster zone, you know. And if user wants, it can add some additional external DNSs, which will update some different zones.
I think if it is, yeah, you mean to spread the external DNS configuration across the tenants?
Yeah, so we have one root external DNS, which manages services in tenant root. And then we have a number of pre-configured external DNSs for each tenant,
Yeah.
which manage a part of DNS zone dedicated to a tenant, a part of our root DNS zone dedicated to a tenant. So we have default DNS that somehow works. And if you don't need some additional stuff, you just use it. And if you want some additional zones to be managed by external DNS, you deploy your own external DNS, configure it in your way, and just have fun.
Yeah, the thing I'm trying to do here is not to complicate it very much. From the last sentence from Georg, I understood that you can configure multiple external DNS, which will be working cluster-wide. And let it be to be managed by administrator. I don't want to put it into tenant level. I think that will be enough for cover 80% of cases, at least for now. We can always do that better later. Do you agree?
Sure.
I think I'll need to see some kind of a diagram here.
Yeah, sure. I think I can prepare PR and put you into reviewers.
Yeah, just second thought, maybe we could just spawn a number of external DNS instances in a root cluster. And no, that's a bad idea. I wanted to dedicate each instance to a tenant, but I don't think it will work well.
Probably the like simplest idea is to just say that Cozystack has its own like top level domain, and that's all. And then we will finish only with a single external DNS instance.
Yeah, but it is already different. It is possible to specify custom domain, but still it can be managed by single external DNS if it's located in the same system. But if you say it has matchers, like domain 1 should be managed through the system 1 and domain 2 should be managed through the system 2, I don't see any problem here. You can just have command chart for specifying all the keys needed for Cloudflare, for Azure. What else? What do we need? Actually, just Cloudflare, I think, for the beginning. Google, maybe.
Route 53, maybe, if we are running in AWS.
Got it. Thank you.
Yes, but the issue is that if you want to add something not from the big DNS provider, like, I don't know, Selectel or Huawei or anything else, Cert Manager change an approach, and all these providers are out of tree, and they are implemented by webhooks. So configuration for Cloudflare, Google Cloud, and Route 53 is simple as it's possible, yeah, but if you need something additional, you will need to bring an additional components to the cluster.
Thank you for information. Okay, and the last topic in agenda is S3 ACL management. Right now we implemented S3 buckets, but they give just basic access for single user account. So anytime when you querying new S3 buckets, you got a user and access key and secret key for accessing this bucket. It is intended that this S3 bucket should have opportunity to create public files or to create additional ACLs for this for specific path in this bucket or for the bucket itself. Initially, I was thinking that we can extend bucket application to enable public access for the bucket itself. But lately, we found that it is possible, it should be possible using S3 API. So my question is, if you have cases when you need to change ACLs for S3, how are you usually doing this? Through the S3 API or through the Terraform? Let me know, because this will be used to make this implementation.
So you are talking about buckets, not the files inside of it.
I think I'm talking about both. So I didn't work with S3 as much with public buckets itself.
Okay. So regarding buckets, so from my experience, we used a very nice ACK operator framework for interacting with Amazon. So in fact, it's just like a Terraform code or CloudFormation. And if you creating some bucket, you explicitly set up the policies, access level, and other stuff. Just inside of YAML or JSON. Not very interesting and very straightforward. Regarding objects permissions, I don't remember that I had ever set up them, I don't know, with Terraform or just with direct S3 API requests.
Got it.
And from my side, I used mostly Terraform for managing S3 buckets, but those buckets were not like created or destroyed very often. So it was like maybe a one-time creation, and during the creation, the ACLs were specified and never touched again, I think.
Yes,
so
but
I used Terraform.
ACL changed more often than bucket is created, because you can have new users, old users.
Yeah, sure.
Move, you need to rethink privilege levels. Yeah, so you accidentally made the bucket public, you need to make it private or vice versa. Yeah, so policies could be changed during bucket lifecycle. Why? Because we don't want to data loss. So it would be stupid if you force users to recreate a bucket if you need to change policies.
Yeah, the reason I'm asking about this, because there are few options how it can be implemented. The option one, it can be done through the Kubernetes API. So for now we have bucket resource, and it can be, the additional annotation can be added. For example, if this bucket should be available publicly. Or we can fully rely on S3 API. But in this way, Kubernetes will not manage it at all. And I'm just trying to understand, do we need to provide such opportunity to configure public?
I can explain. So it would not be convenient to have a separate interfaces. Why? Because like an operator of system, I want to have all the data in one place. So I want to have like a name of bucket, policies, some additional parameters, everything you can retrieve from one moment. I will send you a link. I need just to find the proper page. So you can just steal an S3 object definition from Amazon CloudFormation or Terraform. I don't know anywhere. Anyway, I will send you a API scheme. Oh, I found it. One moment. Here. So you can put to policy some Amazon compatible JSON, which will be passed by the cloud. And that's all. So anyway, you will have some additional probably flags like public yes, no, yeah, but it's not so interesting. Then as a user of system, I created bucket with the proper settings, and I will just use it. I don't need to use some additional tooling to set up an ACL. That's all.
Correct.
I agree.
Got it. Thank you. Thank you, folks.
Well, maybe there's one more thought. Maybe we could have a bucket policy object or something and reference it somehow from the bucket object definition.
I think this is implementation details, and they're not very interested for now. So anyway, it should be done by specifying those users and any options in the same way like we do in like here. So when you create new bucket, it would be nice to have all of these options in values file. And then it will be implemented the best possible way. Okay, then. Thank you. We have OpenFloor. And if somebody has some questions, it is a really nice time for asking.
Kubernetes the latest version support will be introduced.
I don't know.
One, as I remember.
I always say that we are waiting for Service Pack 1.
Funny.
$131.
Yes, probably what is more important, we should provide some nice and clean way for upgrading of tenant clusters. So what do I mean? In clouds, you have a button or setting like after update, yeah, and when new stable version is released, the Kubernetes is after updated. Right now, we don't have such a setting inside of Cozystack, and it would be a manual task to upgrade all the tenant clusters, I may guess.
Yes, anytime when there is update, first you have to update the Cozystack itself. It will bring new charts with newer versions. And after that, you will see additional arrow here that that update is available. And then you can click and install it. If those applications are managed through the GitOps approach or through the API, the update can be handled by it. So about Kubernetes 1.31 support, I think we need to wait until new version of Kamaji will be released, and we can add this support to the Cozystack itself. There are two types of Kubernetes. One is managed by Talus itself, so we need to wait for support from the Talus, and then also update Kubernetes, tenant Kubernetes, which are managed by Kamaji.
I was talking about tenant clusters primarily.
Yeah, in this way, we're just waiting for new version of Kamaji, because if you try to use newer version of Kubernetes, it will say that it is not supported yet. Even if you specify different images. So we need to update Kamaji first. And also there will be change for this fix for garbage collection. It was dirty workaround. Now they change more things in kubelet configuration. It wasn't properly configured previously, and I think that we will adopt it very soon. And anytime when they right after they release the newer version of Kamaji, we will try to put it into Cozystack and support the newer version as well. So I think the next release will already include the support for newer version of Kubernetes. Well, that's it.
God, oh my God, very important thing. As from the v1.0.0 release, Plastics no longer provides stable release artifacts for Kamaji. What does it mean for us?
Where did you get this information?
Just open the release page. So I see that they have, what I sent you a link. So I see that they have something like nightly builds or I don't know, weekly builds. And it does not sound like a typical approach with stable SAM versioning.
I think this is not a big problem. I think they will release the newer version soon. So they still have these weekly builds, but I think it is even shouldn't be a problem to use master version. If you can properly test it and hard code this version in Cozystack. We already have those.
But it sounds a risky thing, and probably it's a question for discussion with Kamaji maintainers.
Anytime we use some technology, we make some evaluation how to fix it, and actually we can maintain Kamaji by itself because we have enough expertise level and know how it works. I think it shouldn't be a problem to use him in nightly builds, but I would wait for yeah, they don't provide stable releases.
Yeah, no way more. Yeah.
Anyway, I think it should be okay for using Edge as well.
It's not okay, unfortunately, So I'm just asking to make some discussion with Prometheus. Probably we will
yeah.
have some option to make agreement.
Yeah. Good point. Well, we are running out of time, so we have to finish. I will just put information that we have few pull requests which are waiting for reviewing. The first one is update of VPN application. There are added options for specifying host and external IPs, and also automatic password generation for the users. And also dashboard now shows ready URL which you can use for shadow source. And the second PR is adding those fancy functionality for make diff, make apply, make show, even for packages extra and packages apps. And the only thing you need to specify name and namespace variable here. So if somebody will be able to make review, please do this. And I have to finish this meeting. So thank you everyone for attending. See you next week, same time.
Bye bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye bye.